If you've never been on a Facebook group, probably don't need to even be doing that. We actually run a Facebook group. It's called NFL Memes, and yes, I know, very fucking original. But we recently had something very bizarre happen on our Facebook group, and we just started this thing a couple months ago, and it kind of blew up overnight. We now have almost 30,000 people in it. But we had this guy, his name was Ike Sanford, and he came in the group, and essentially what he did, he was a Steelers fan. Shout out to Brandon and all the Yinzers out there. But what he did is he just trolled the group incessantly. Came on
barrels day one.
He would just dump on people, call people clowns. He'd go on and be like, the Steelers are going to win this weekend, clown. Like, you guys are fucking clowns. Every one of his opponents was clowns. And it just so happened the Steelers were really good and they could back up his shit talk. But this guy, he talked more shit than I have ever seen in a Facebook group. And he grew to this legendary status. Truly. Like, weird. He became like a celebrity within this group. And just prior to us muting him the last time I checked it, he had posted, it was like 600 posts because we didn't have post approval on or anything like that, and over 1,500 comments over the course of like 3 months. We were looking at his stats. He's been there since June, since pretty much we started out the group. But it was the weirdest thing. So then he starts just absolutely trolling this group incessantly. And we eventually mute him because people were reporting him left and right. It was getting out of hand. It was getting ridiculous. And so we muted him. We did everything we could to try and get him to stop. He did not. We kept muting him. When you get muted on a group, I imagine, especially if you're a troll, that's a very damaging thing because you can't post, you can't comment, you can't do anything. And for Ike, he got so pissed off about it. So he left the group, and people thought that we booted him. And so there was a mutiny, straight up. There was like 100 people that posted on the group, justice for Ike, and bring Ike back. It was like hashtag justice for Ike. First of all, that's a little fucking dramatic. Or like justice for Breonna Taylor, like, justice for Ike, come on. We're talking about an internet troll here. A guy who left on his own accord. So it really was one of the most bizarre situations. Did any of you guys happen to tune in to watch any of this unfold? It was a full week of just a riot. And with 27,000 people, there were so many posts popping off that we eventually had to turn on post approval. I mean, this thing got out of hand. Did any of you happen to catch it?
I witnessed some of it. I'm glad that I had not an admin in there and dealing with that. A thankless job that those admins are doing in there, and I appreciate that they're doing it. But it's just crazy to see how many people that would jump on his post and badmouth them are now like free Ike, free Ike. It's like Ike's free. Like, he can come back anytime he wants. Nobody, like, he's not banned.
Nobody supports a troll like a troll, right? Like, in trolls we trust. I don't know if that's their motto, but I'm making it their motto. It didn't surprise me that people came to his support because, you see behavior like that rightfully, I'll say the word punished. I mean, it's not like we really punished him. We just moderated. But, people don't like to see that. So the reaction made sense. And it was sort of just like watching a big wreck.
I wish
you don't want to watch it, but you have to.
I wish he would come back because honestly, like, engagement's what we're there for. Like, every one of his posts had tons of engagement.
No, at first, he was totally welcome back, 100%. He's no longer welcome back. Seriously, he's since come on our page. He's called us racist. Like, come on, racist. Like, get the fuck out of here. See that. No, it turned into a race thing. And listen, a lot of things are race things. I'll be the first to admit it. This was not a fucking race thing. In fact, we were Ike's biggest fan. I tried so hard to get him to stop. And admittedly, so we got two moderators, and I literally just appointed two moderators. They've people that have followed our page for a long time. And one of the moderators, they deleted one of his posts, and they cited it for hate speech. And it was a post. He was literally just calling people clowns. So his clowns, hate speech, no, not so fast. So I told that moderator that was ridiculous. I restored the post. He got so mad about it. He posted that thing on like over 100 posts, and we were getting so many reports on the page. What happens on a Facebook page is if you get so many reports, Facebook eventually intervenes, especially if people are reporting it for hate speech, because because Facebook is trying to prevent,
right,
these groups from forming and basically being successful.
Don't worry about it. Zuckerberg just said what Steve O'Banion is doing is okay. So I think we're in the clear. I think we're in the clear here.
No, so it was hilarious. And he's gone. He's gone forever. At first, we were like, yeah, he can come back. Then he came on our page, call us racist. We're like, fuck this guy. I think the thing that actually set him off, that made him leave, is I wrote him and I was just like, dude, you need to chill out. And he said something snarky to me back. And I go, dude, we tried to help you out, but you're too dumb to realize it. And he got so mad. And people on his page, you can actually go on his page now and see things. He's commented about the situation, and it's hilarious. His most recent post, I'm still obsessed with this guy. He's hilarious. Go on his page, Ike Sanford. His most recent post is about COVID. He talks about how the virus is evolving, and he says this virus is not from this earth. He said his theory is that the virus was dropped off by an asteroid. And so I think my point about him being dumb is pretty good. Pretty good. I'm feeling pretty good about it. Anyways, rest in peace, Ike Sanford. Anybody on our Facebook group that might be listening to this, if you're upset about Ike, listen, do us a favor. Write us a really long email, put a lot of all caps, turn spell check off, send us that email. But before you do, print it out, fold it up real tightly, and shove it right up your ass. Ike is not coming back. I'm sorry you're sad about this troll that called you all clowns, but it's over. It's over. Okay. Moving on. Did you guys see the hole in one the other day? That skipped off the wall.
That was awesome. That skimming the top, that was pretty sweet.
So that wasn't actually like in competition, or was it?
No. So the Wednesday before, there's always like a hole in one par 3 like thing that they do for fun beforehand. I don't know if it's for charity or for practice or what it is, but before most majors, there's a little par 3 hole in one competition that goes on.
Right. So was that actually like a trick shot, or was that just going to go in the water and then it happened to skip off?
No, those golfers are too good. That had to be on purpose. I'd imagine, like, maybe if one of us is swinging and it get a low line drive like that, maybe I'd believe it if that was like an amateur. But no, a professional hits a shot like that, I got to imagine.
Masters in November. Are you for it or against it?
I think it sucks, honestly. Like, I love the Masters. I'm a terrible golfer, but I watched a lot of it when we had nothing else to watch. And I weirdly have gotten more into golf. I know more players than I probably have ever known. But it's just going to get absolutely shadowed, right? Like, starting to talk about college football playoff, NBA news is starting to swirl. We're in the heat of the NFL. The Masters is going to absolutely get buried, and I think it sucks. What about you guys? You think you guys will watch any of it at all?
No, I had no idea it was on until I was prepping for this. So
I watched it all day. On me. I watched it all day.
I think had it been, back in the summer when we had no sports, probably would have done great. But right now, it's hard to say we have too many sports, but I feel like we have too many sports.
Definitely have sports.
Yeah, and it's been that way since they've come back. It's just like there was a period of time where I think during the World Series, it was like a Thursday in between games. I was like, I feel like this is the first day we haven't had something in like 2 months. It's been just wall to wall.
Yeah, the Masters, it's perfectly placed where it is in the year.
In April.
Yep. It's in April. So, I lived up in Indiana, obviously, Brandon. That's where we met. And so if you're from a northern state, the Masters is even more interesting to you because it's just starting to become spring, right? So like the sun's coming out, you're able to play golf. You see that beautiful course, it's green. To me, it embodies the spring. Yep. And it's a great sport to kind of come out of your shell. A lot of people start playing golf. I love watching them or going to play like a Thursday morning or Saturday morning round and then going back, drinking some beers and watching the Masters all day. But it just loses its luster in the fall. Like I'm I'm not interested in it at all.
Yeah,
not even a little bit.
No.
Yeah. Well,
what does the course look like? Is it just like trees with no leaves and like what is it? How's it looking?
I'm not even sure.
Yeah, it has a different look to it. I mean, the course is obviously beautiful. You can tell, the lack of spring flowers aren't there. The trees aren't as green. They're not completely barren, but yeah, it's a different look for sure. The weather is about the same. I mean, it did rain today, but it rains a lot in early April too. So
right.
The rain is about the only aesthetic thing that is similar in that regard, Derek.
Sure.
If anyone is interested, I know you two aren't. The guy I have money on two guys. Xander Schauffele is one that I listen to. Ryan Burr. Ryan Burr is my go-to for golf. One that I had no idea Ryan Burr even existed, but he's phenomenal. So I got the Xander Schauffele pickup for him, and then I'm a huge Dustin Johnson fan. I mean, he's a great social media follow. He's just a boss dude. And he's at -3. So he is 4 off the lead, which, isn't great, but it's only the first day. So if you want some great odds, going into the weekend, I'd take Dustin Johnson and Xander, my guy, is only 2 off the lead. So
nice.
Yep.
Shit. Well, the NBA is back in the news. Obviously, the NBA season is officially a go. I believe it starts Christmas Day, Christmas Eve,
the 24th. Yeah, Christmas Eve.
Yep. So a lot of I think we were kind of denied one interesting storyline last year, in that Kevin Durant went over to Brooklyn. They signed him knowing that they weren't going to have him for the entire 2020 year. Kyrie Irving went over there and just kind of floundered. Looked kind of like. Kyrie Irving needs another superstar to be effective.
He looked like Kyrie after LeBron left Cleveland, and they end up being the worst team in the league with him. I mean, that's how they end up getting the Wiggins pick that they end up traded for Kevin Love. But yeah, no, Brooklyn was really bad.
A lot of times when players leave teams, they want to prove something, and Kyrie wanted so badly to prove that he didn't need LeBron. And yeah, I mean, he's a good player, but man, he's not one of those. He's not an elite player. I would say.
I mean, he failed to do it by himself in Cleveland. He failed to do it in Boston. Actually, he was like the worst part of Boston. They shipped his ass out of there as soon as they could. Kemba Walker came into town, and Kemba Walker was a way better teammate than Kyrie is. So I think Brooklyn's a mess this year. Even with who I think you guys disagree, who I think is the best basketball player in the league, Kevin Durant. I think Brooklyn has disaster written all over it.
So, in terms of scorers, I mean, like just best player. We talked about that earlier. Who's the best player in the NBA? I mean, in terms of the best scorers, yeah, he's unstoppable, but he's not a great defender. So that I think that's what our conversation was earlier in an earlier podcast was, can he be the best player in the league if he's not an elite defender? I don't think he can.
Yeah, I don't think so either. No.
Yeah. But for those that do follow the NBA, the draft is next week on the 18th, and it's going to be one of the weaker drafts. Last year we had Zion, and it was huge. This year, LaMelo Ball is the biggest, which means I definitely won't be watching because that means he'll have his dad all over the TV screen. So I will be staying far away from the NBA draft. But as we talked about earlier, the last thing on the NBA I want to touch on, and we can move on, is did you guys see this Oladipo news that came out today?
No.
He openly went into the Miami Heat locker room after the game and said, guys, can I come play for you next year? And it just leaked today. They don't know which Miami Heat player is leaked it, but it's out. And the Pacers have openly come out and said, yeah, we're trading him. Like, Oladipo is 100% on the block. We are not going into the season with him, which I don't understand why they do that. They kind of did that with Paul George too, and I think it totally diminishes the value. But some early teams in the lead is Miami, obviously. They obviously just went to the Eastern Conference Finals, so he's an option there. You have Porzingis and Luka down in Dallas. The Nets, like we were just talking about, with Kyrie and Durant. And then rumor has it he is very, very close with Kyle Lowry in Toronto. So do you think any of those teams, if he would go to any of those teams, do you think they could compete with the Lakers next year if he made a big three with any of those teams?
I mean, personally, if LeBron is anywhere near to what he was last year, I don't think any team is going to compete with the Lakers because I think Anthony Davis just gets better. Anthony Davis really hasn't even hit his prime yet. And he was, God, man, when he turned it on last year in the playoffs, who could beat the Lakers? I mean, all they're going to do is they're going to recruit some more role players because that's what the NBA is. Guys will come over who are, they'll take less because they've played in the league for 10 years and they're afraid they're not going to get a ring. That's what happened in Miami. That's what happened in Cleveland. That's what's going to happen even more. I don't think they got a lot of great role players in LA. And I think that they're going to get even more this year. I mean, name some great role players that they had last year. They really didn't have a lot of good ones. No. Danny Green, awful. So, yeah, I think it's going to be even better next year. So, no, I don't think they can compete.
I think the only team that
the Mavericks, if the Mavericks can get him without giving up a big piece, I think Dallas could compete. I think Luka continues to progress. He's gotten better every year. Kristaps back and healthy. That big three could give him enough scoring and enough big bodies for Willie Stein to be competitive.
Yeah. The team I like there is Toronto with Lowry, DeRozan, and Pascal Siakam plus Oladipo, and I think they have the best coach in the league in Nick Nurse. So I think Toronto could be pretty that's not a three-headed monster, it's a four-headed monster in Toronto. So sure. That's who I would think if anyone want to give the Lakers a run, it would be up there in the North.
Let me ask you thoughts on Golden State.
I just don't think they got the dogs. I think I don't think Draymond and Curry and who's the other shooter?
Klay
Thompson.
Yeah. I mean, listen to those three compared to the three guys we were just talking about. I honestly think it's over for them in Golden State.
Yeah. I hope so.
I like Draymond a lot when he's your 4, but when he's your 3, it doesn't do anything for me.
Agreed. All right, guys, let's dive into the NFL, our bread and butter. And there's a topic, around this time. It's actually earlier in the year that they already start this conversation. But around this time, you look at these teams. You look at teams like the Steelers at 8-0. And one of the hottest topics on the docket for every podcast, every sports show that you're seeing is, are the Steelers overrated? Can you be overrated at 8-0? That's a good question. So what do you look at? Do you look at strength of schedule? How do you rank it? So there is a metric out there known as DVOA. It ranks your defense and your offense. And we were talking about it prior to the podcast. It's essentially like WAR in baseball. It's like wins over replacement. Like how much better Derek, give your take on DVOA. I feel like I'm not going to do this justice.
Yeah, so the way I understand it is it's similar to WAR in the fact that it takes, in this case, an offense as a cumulative entity, not just an individual player, and ranks it above or against the replacement based on your opponent, on things like weather or stadium, home, away. Basically takes all those other elements that can be controlled in a schedule and tries to factor for them so you can really put a team versus each other. Because not all 300-yard passing game, 100-yard rushing games are created equally. Some of those are harder and more impressive to obtain. Just because you did it against the Seahawks, it's not as impressive as if you did against like a team like the Saints or a team like the Steelers.
Yeah, it's so comprehensive, right? Like it literally the formula is for every single play. So an example that I read that makes tons of sense if you want to understand this. First, on the offensive perspective, if you get a first down, if you get 5 yards on 3rd and 4, that's worth more than 5 yards on 1st and 10, and it's even more ranks better if you get 5 yards on 3rd and 12. the 5 yards on 3rd and 4 are better than those other two scenarios. Not all 5 yards are created equal. And then flip that over. If you get a stop on 3rd and 4, that's better than a stop on 1st and 10, and so on and so on.
Yeah, I mean, it's just if you look at the stat sheet, think of like a 15-yard corner route to the sideline, perfectly thrown ball, tight coverage. Is that a more impressive play, or a little flip out to the running back and there was blown coverage and nobody was in the flat and he got ran out of bounds 15 yards later? Like,
yeah,
that's how you take those two plays that on a stat sheet are exactly the same, but they're not the same.
Yep. And like what Brandon was saying, it almost gives a metric for like it gives you an upgrade for like quote unquote being clutch, right?
Yep.
You get 5 yards on 3rd and 4, it's way more clutch than getting 5 yards on. Yeah.
That's how you filter Matt Ryan garbage timeout.
Right. It's as close to sabermetrics. I mean, there are some advanced metrics. They're becoming a bigger part of the game. PFF obviously has a lot of metrics. This is a metric that's produced by footballoutsiders.com. And it has grown in popularity greatly. And a lot of people live and die by it. If you look at all the previous Super Bowl winners, like going all the way back to when this metric can even be drawn up, it is extremely accurate. So if you're looking for an edge in like gambling, anything like that, if you just are kind of have a toss-up pick, it's a good reference point. But at this point in the year, to look at it, there are some interesting teams that are here at the top. So number one team in the NFL, according to this metric, is the New Orleans Saints. No real surprise there. So the way it does it is it ranks their offense and their defense. And I think it's a good indicator. Like if Pittsburgh is 6th in the league and they're 8-0, then yeah, I'd say they're overrated. In this case, New Orleans at number 1, their offense is ranked 6th overall and their defense is ranked 7th. So really well-rounded team. Now let's go to the second team on the list, which is really shocking to me, by the way. And this does factor in this week. I made sure of this. But it is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So very interesting. I mean, we were just talking about yesterday in the overreaction pod, are the Bucs done? Are they in trouble? This metric says differently. This metric says that they are a really great team. And how about that with the NFC South? New Orleans number 1 and Tampa number 2. Like, what a great division that is. So the Bucs, they ranked 13th on offense. So, that's about where I would have had them. And number 1 on defense. And 100%. I mean, I agree with that. I'd put them or the Steelers there. Some other interesting teams on here. Obviously, Pittsburgh, who we were talking about, they rank 4th on the list. And they are 15th ranked offense. So that was a little bit surprising to me, to be honest. Did you guys think that they'd be better than that? Their offense feels better than that.
Yeah, it's a lack of run game is honestly what's dragging that down. It's been inconsistent at best. I mean, if you watch the game last week, Dallas has the worst run defense, and the Steelers could not run on them. A little bit by design because Ben started just calling all the plays, and he's not taking his own ball out of his hand. But I mean, you could just tell that something is going on with that scheme right now. Right. So. It's not surprising to me as a Steelers fan that if 15's average, they feel like an average offense.
Yeah.
Right now.
And honestly, this isn't telling me anything I didn't know. So they're 15th ranked offense and 2nd ranked defense. They've won games this year by their defense. And 4th overall, being 8-0. That all gels to me. Now, so if you look down this list, and we're obviously not going to go through this whole list because we don't really have the time for that, but you try to look for outliers, right? So who has a winning record and is really far down on this list? The Chicago Bears. We've been saying it a lot. We just literally said it yesterday in our pod. At 5-4, they are the 17th ranked DVOA team. So clearly, this is an overrated team, according to this metric. That is the first. So the Vikings, for instance, at 3-6, 3-5 are 14th ranked. So they're 3 spots higher than Chicago here. Chicago's offense is ranked 28th. 28th. At one point, they were 5-1? And they've gone on a skid, obviously. But man, if you're looking for a team that is 100% going to collapse, their defense is ranked 4th, of course. But man, They have straight up one of the worst offenses in the league. This team is unsustainable.
Yeah, there's some surprising ones. I mean, you look down and it kind of makes sense. It's those teams that are doing well in the wins and loss column, but you're not excited about. Cleveland and Las Vegas, 2 teams back to back, 22nd and 23rd, both 5-3, and they're just not good football teams.
So one thing we're going to get to later, and I'm going to spoil my bold prediction now. We're going to do bold predictions and some other NFL predictions later. But did you guys check out this? So this is before I even saw this list. My bold prediction was the Washington football team is going to win that division.
Right.
If you look at them, they are 4 or 5 places ahead of Philadelphia, and they're number 1 in their division. And they're only a game and a half behind. So what I thought was a bold prediction turns out, if you follow this pretty closely, it's not that bold. So that was something that really, really jumped out to me. But again,
seeing this, go ahead.
No, and it's that offense that's dragging them down. So maybe with Mr. Checkdown coming in, with a new quarterback, all they can do is go up. Well, I guess they could go one spot down, but mostly all they can do is up. So I actually like infusing a new quarterback into that system because, if Alex Smith can only be marginally better than what they were producing, I think they're looking really good to win that division.
For sure. Yeah, and I feel better about my Miami's better than Buffalo claim, too, saying this.
Miami's ranked 10th and Buffalo is ranked 13th. So according to this metric, it also appears that Buffalo is overrated. They have a 10th ranked offense and a 17th ranked defense. That was actually really surprising to me when I saw this. I think people kind of just chalk up Buffalo's defense as this good defense. It really isn't. I mean, it has not been as good as it has been in recent years. Their offense is really carrying them. And that's another team, just like the Bears, that I've been saying is overrated. I think Buffalo is overrated. I really
You just assumed Buffalo's defense on reputation is good. Just because they have been for the past 5 years, they've been consistently good. And now you see this, and it kind of shows why you're not super excited about a team like Buffalo.
Sure.
And look out, Miami's only one loss, only has one more loss than them. It looks like they played one fewer game.
Yep. So I had NFL Network on today. We're recording this on Thursday. I had ESPN on today. Everyone was talking about how the upset potential in the Pittsburgh Cincinnati game. Seeing their DVOA, I am not worried about it at all. But that the Cincinnati beating Pittsburgh has been a sexy upset pick. By these metrics, not so fast.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I like those in-division picks because, they're close games. But then in this case where one team has been so dominant, I think it's in a lot of these Cincinnati players' heads that they can't beat Pittsburgh.
Right. Yeah. Yep. The only other takeaway I have from these rankings is that the Rams are better than I think they are.
I know. I saw that too. I was like, man, they're top 10 on both sides.
I was hoping Brandon wasn't going to see it because we just talked about it yesterday. Although Brandon did just contradict himself yesterday on a podcast. We were talking about yesterday. We were saying, is Minnesota better than the Rams? According to this, not so much. The Rams are 9th ranked on this. I've been saying this about the Rams all year, though. Their defense is phenomenal. Dude, the Rams defense is like elite. But according to this metric, their offense is also 5th ranked in the league. That blew my mind. I straight up did not expect that. To me, that just shows what a genius Sean McVay is.
For sure.
Yeah, the thing that jumped out to me that Derek and I started talking about, I don't think anyone would put Indy as a top 10 team. They have Indy as the 6th best team. And pretty comfortably there. They have Indy over Green Bay, Seattle, the Rams, Arizona. They're behind in the division. They're 6 places higher than Tennessee. I don't think Indianapolis is that good. Damn, that was the biggest surprise out of this entire list for me is where Indy comes out of.
I think mine is, we always talk about how Arizona can't stop anybody. They're a 10th ranked defense.
Yep.
And we all we do is talk about how terrible they are and they can't stop anybody. They're one of 3 teams that has a top 10 offense and defense. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is interesting. It really is. But yeah. So let's go away from this. We're halfway through the season, guys. So let's give out our halfway through the season awards. Just straight up, it's 9 weeks in. Who's your MVP?
For me, go ahead, Derek.
Go ahead. Russell Wilson. I think he's the pick, and I think that honestly, some people might be a little hesitant after last week, but to me that reinforces it. It shows if Russell Wilson plays average, he had 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, a little over 300 yards. That's an average NFL week, and they couldn't beat the Bills. So he is carrying that team. It's amazing that he hasn't had a MVP vote before, and I think he's going to get a ton of them this year.
Yeah, damn it! I wish I would have went first because now I'm going to sound unoriginal. I mean, not to reach back to the DVOA, but he is the 24th best defense. Are you kidding me? And they're the number 2 seed right now in the NFC halfway through. I think it's got to be. Russell Wilson. But one dark horse, I saw this today on Twitter. If you compare Kyler Murray's stats halfway through the season to Lamar Jackson's stats, Kyler Murray actually has better stats than Lamar. So, if Arizona can go on a little bit of a run, I could see Kyler getting strong consideration for MVP.
Yeah, I like both those picks. Russell Wilson's my pick 100%, but I think a dark horse in this race, weirdly enough, was seeing some comparisons. Dalvin Cook. There have the last 2 running backs that have won MVP in the league. First of all, it's not even close. Dalvin Cook and Derrick Henry are just running away with best running back in the league. It's kind of crazy. It's like Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry, Saints. Why the fuck can't I remember his name? Kamara, and then everybody else. It is such a steep drop off after these guys, but Dalvin Cook in particular is just running away with it. And this is after missing a game. But the last 2 running backs to win MVP are Adrian Peterson and LaDainian Tomlinson. And he is actually outpacing both those players in terms of yardage with 1 less game.
And I don't remember this, so this isn't a rhetorical question. How did those teams do that season?
The Vikings made the playoffs, and they both made the playoffs.
So now knowing that, I didn't know that before. Does Minnesota have to win the playoffs, or does team success not factor into the MVP discussion?
I think team success has to, right?
I agree.
Most valuable players. So, yeah, I think they do have to make the playoffs for sure.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't baseball and Mike Trout. Like, this is the NFL where those guys can disproportionately carry the load. I mean, they get 30 touches a game. They get 40 passes per game. It's not like it's baseball where everybody gets the same number of at-bats.
Right. Sure. What about offensive rookie of the year halfway through the year?
Herbert. Period.
Yeah,
I mean, Burrow's in the running, but I like Herbert.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the odds right now on DraftKings, and Justin Herbert is actually negative money. That fits Derek's statement by hands down. Joe Burrow is not a distant second at plus 113, but then it drops off. The next 3 are Tua at plus 800, Justin Jefferson at plus 20. At 2,200, and then James Robinson at plus 29. So those are the top 5. But I mean, it's a Burrow Herbert neck and neck. And here's my reasoning why I would go Herbert. Burrow had all offseason to plan on being a starter. Herbert thought he was getting a learn it year, right? He got thrust into it. He wasn't getting first team reps like Burrow. He wasn't, getting weeks of practice where, game plan was getting devised around him. Herbert got thrust into a situation that he was unprepared for and stepped up to it. So that's why I would go Herbert over Burrow. But I think there's still going to be a lot to play out in that 2-horse race.
Yeah, you got to go Herbert, man. He's straight up. I mean, I've never really seen a rookie season like this ever. Like, from any position, the fact that the Chargers are losing, we talk about it so much. It's a travesty that they can't win with this. They have a decent defense. I know their defense has some holes. Their secondary is really bad, by the way, really bad. But they have a good front 7. The fact that they can't finish games is it's terrible.
They can't run the ball.
Herbert does benefit. I mean, the fact that team got the 6th overall pick last year in the draft. is ridiculous. I mean, just imagine if they had why am I so bad? Derwin James.
Yeah.
The team would just be absolutely unstoppable. Yes, their team has underperformed, but you mentioned it before. Does offensive rookie of the year, does that factor in success of the team? It doesn't really. If you look at his pass, so I think he's a shoo-in. The only guy that can really challenge him is Joe Burrow, which is crazy because they are both having historical seasons. The fact that Tua is even on the board surprises me. Are those updated rankings that are odds that you were looking at?
November 10th. So 2 days ago.
How can he have that coming in on the 8th game? It doesn't even make sense to me. But what idiot is betting on that? He doesn't even look that impressive even in his second game.
No.
But Herbert is just running away with it. I think he's just going to get better, just better and better and better. Like, are we looking at a legitimate competitor for Patrick Mahomes? Like, when Patrick Mahomes came along, I was like, I've never seen a guy like this. Never seen a guy that came along so fast in his second year, just MVP right out the chutes. Like, are we already seeing the second Patrick Mahomes just a couple years after? It's mind blowing.
Kind of brutal too because it's in division, so those guys are going to be going at it head to head. Taking wins away from each other. It's going to be interesting. It's fun to see two guys like that play twice a year. I mean, the NFL had to manufacture Brady Manning. Where in this case you're just going to get it because both those guys are going to get locked up long term. You're going to get it twice a year every year.
Yep. What about defensive rookie of the year? Who you guys got?
Yeah. So looking at these odds here, how about you guys go? Because I'm cheating. I have the odds.
I still like Chase. I know he's missed some time, but nobody else has really jumped out. The only other two that I like in that discussion, I think, kind of those top three are, I'm blanking on the name. The guy Winfield Jr. and the guy in Carolina, the DB in Carolina. Those are the only other two that are they really jump out. But I think Chase gets the benefit of it, and I think he'll finish strong. And that's a surprisingly good defense. We looking at this DVOA earlier. Washington's a top 10 defense, and I think he's a big reason of it.
Yeah, I mean Washington. This is how funny Washington is of a team. Yes, 100% Chase Young. I mean he's the guy came out and people were like, "Wow, we've never seen a talent like this in quite some time," and he really is that monster guy. He's like Nick Bosa. The fact that they came out in consecutive years is kind of unreal. I really think we're seeing a renaissance of talent in the NFL at both sides of the ball. And Chase Young is, man, if you look at him physically, how do you stop this guy? He's performing on the field. And like we were talking about, going back to DVOA, the Washington football team is 6th on defense. 6th.
Yep.
31st on offense. 31st. So, yeah, they're that good because of Chase Young.
Yep. The other guys getting consideration that you guys didn't say, the third best odd. So Derek, you were right. Antoine Winfield down in Tampa Bay, who's had just a monster rookie season.
Yeah.
But third, right behind him, is Patrick Queen. Newman, who is sometimes on our podcast. I wanted him on draft day so bad. The fact that Patrick Queen fell to the Ravens, that is like such a perfect linebacker for that team. He is going to be a terror for a really long time. So that's Drew. I agree with you. Team success doesn't really play into it. But if Patrick Queen, is on prime time a lot the last month of the year because the Ravens are in the thick of it, I think that could push him above Chase Young. And the guy in fourth, this is actually 3 weeks in a row that I brought him up, mostly because I hear a lot about him here in Indy, is Julian Blackmon. A safety that has taken over Malik Hooker's job since Malik Hooker's Achilles injury, and he's been better than Malik Hooker. So Julian Blackmon is definitely a name that a rising star within the NFL.
Where is Chin from Carolina? Just out of curiosity.
So Chin is 5th. So Yep. So the odds are Chase Young 170, Patrick Queen 300. Antoine Winfield 275, Blackmon 600, Jeremy Chin 900. So 5th.
That sounds about right.
The one name I didn't hear is Isaiah Simmons. No love for Isaiah. He's really
let me jump to top 10. I was only Isaiah Simmons plus 3,300. He has the 8th best odds as of November 10th.
Yep. So he has been on a tear as of recent. He had a really slow start, but he's really coming along. If he has a strong end of the year, who knows?
That's actually not bad. Not a bad bet, actually. I think you're right there. Kind of along the same lines of my Patrick Queen. You know, if Arizona continues to play prime time and in big games, and he keeps on his tear, that could be a nice payday. Throwing $5 or $10 at plus 3,300 on Isaiah Simmons.
His coming out game was against Seattle when he had that monster pick, which really sealed the game. He's a special talent. I think guys like that, he came in unpolished, just this phenomenal athlete. You didn't know where to put him. Do you start him at cornerback or defensive line? Like, it's so fucking weird. He's so talented. But yeah, I love that guy just going forward. I just had to give him a shout out because Marcus isn't here. And he
Totally.
But guys, coach of the year.
So this one for me, there's two scenarios. If Pittsburgh finishes 16-0, which they definitely could, they have a cakewalk of back end of the schedule. Anybody goes 16-0, it has to be coach of the year.
They only play the Ravens. That's the only team. Like, they literally don't play anybody.
It's Mike Tomlin in that scenario, or if this other scenario doesn't happen. If the Dolphins do come back and end up either winning the division or making the playoffs, I think it's Flores, because to make the playoffs with that bad of a roster, to me, is a bigger feat. But if that doesn't happen, I think it's Tomlin pretty much.
Yeah, I think Tomlin's kind of running away with it just because of how, listen, he almost should have won it last year. Going 8-8 with that team is fucking ridiculous what they did last year with so little. But yeah, I would have to give it to Tomlin right now, but I agree with you. I mentioned it just yesterday. Brian Flores, man, if he even puts together a winning season, I think you got to give it to him. Just last year, they were talking about it being the worst roster in NFL history. Like, people were downplaying the Miami Dolphins so much. People were downplaying Brian Flores, and he's really embraced the role. I think he's a really good guy. Another guy, though, that I do think deserves consideration because he has just done an exceptional job, and I don't think gets enough credit, is it's Pete Carroll. The fact that they are scrapping together wins, the fact that they've been as dominant as they have, the fact that they're 6-2 with that bad of a defense is really impressive. I got to give it up to Pete Carroll. That guy has hasn't had a losing season since he has not had a losing season with
Seattle.
He has had a losing season with
Russell
Wilson. He has not had a losing season with Russell Wilson. It's insane.
So this is gonna piss you off, Drew.
All right.
You guys nailed it. The first four, very obvious. Tomlin, the leader, then Flores, then Vrabel, then Reed. Fifth best odds, according to DraftKings. Cliff Kingsbury at plus 1,600. He is just above Bruce Arians at plus 1,800. So there you are. Cliff Kingsbury, fifth best odds to win Coach of the Year. What are your thoughts on that, Drew?
If you marry together preseason what we thought the Cardinals were going to be and talk about how terrible that defense is, and then you look at some of the advanced stats and they're top 10 in both, that's good coaching.
I just know Drew hates him. So
it's impressive what the Cardinals have done. He's not the GM though. They've brought in some great talent at both sides of the ball. He's certainly not coaching defense, which has been a significant upgrade for them. And he has Kyler Murray, one of the most special talents in the entire NFL. I could be completely wrong about Cliff Kingsbury. I really could. I don't think I am. I'm just going to wait to see it play out. I think he's got one of the best talents we've seen a quarterback come out in quite some time. We were talking about it earlier, by the way, and actually this is just, I'll just hold this off because I want this to be our next topic, but it is really interesting. But yeah, you know what? I could be completely wrong about Kingsbury, but I don't think I am. I think I don't think
those two things are mutually exclusive, though. I think you can be right about Kingsbury, and he could have had a really good season. Right. It's coach of the year. It's not best coach, because if it was best coach, Bill Belichick wins it every single year because he's the best coach, period. But he doesn't have the best years all the time. That's why is Flores the best coach in the NFL? No. Is he top 5? No. But he's having the most impressive year. So I could see Kingsbury being there, but still not being a good coach overall, because I don't think he is either. I'm with you there.
Yeah. So the next topic I wanted to bring up, and it was something really interesting. We were talking about it earlier. It's not in our outline, but I do want to present this. If you look at age and talent at the quarterback position, it is heavily weighted on the AFC. So I challenged our group of friends, our group of sports enthusiasts the other day, said, just give me a young talent in the NFC that's playing quarterback. The only one we could come up with is Kyler Murray. And I scoured every team since. There is straight up. And what do you consider young? I'd say, I'd even go 27 and below. So just give it 27 and below. Who on the NFC is below that? Only Kyler Murray. Now we'll go to the AFC. Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. I'm sure I'm missing somebody else too.
Tua.
Josh Allen.
Yes, significantly stacked on the AFC. Like the AFC is set up for success for so long. You have these aging dinosaurs in the NFC. Like, is the NFC just going to have this massive collapse when all these guys retire? Talking Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Rodgers, like it's kind of crazy when you think about it. It's a little bizarre. I've never
before the Dak injury. Would you have said Dak?
Yeah, for sure, of course, dude. You know what? We make fun of Dak a lot because Cowboys and it's good for material. But dude, Dak Prescott is a really fucking good quarterback.
Yeah,
he is. Just straight.
Yeah, kind of a tweener, but you got to throw Deshaun Watson in that AFC mix too.
Sure.
Because he's probably 27, 28. So he's not exactly young, but he's on the right side of 30. You know?
Right. Agreed.
Yeah.
But
you guys have any big predictions for the rest of the year? I have one more. You guys already heard one of my other bold predictions.
I mean, I still like my Miami pick, but now it's not looking so bold anymore. But
right.
I'm going to stick by that one. Outside of that, everything's kind of up and down, man. Every week, it feels like all these teams are just so close to each other. It's hard to really see something crazy dramatic happening. I want the Jets to win as many games as possible, but they just refuse to win.
No, don't steal my other one. My other bold prediction is that Jets
you think they
are the
16
second team ever, 0-16. Yeah, the second team ever to do it. That was my next bold prediction. I mean, if you look at their schedule, it's hard. I mean, they play who we love. We love the Chargers. We love the Dolphins, Seahawks, Rams, Browns, Patriots. Like the only game is the Raiders because I could see the Raiders dropping that game. Right, like that would be just such a game that Oakland drops is at the Jets. But I mean, outside of that, they don't have a winning they're playing the Bengals or they're playing the Jaguars. They don't have a 50-50 game on their schedule. It's really looking, especially after their choke job on Monday night. I think they're going to go 0-16.
Sure.
If New England goes 4-12 and beats the Jets twice, I'm gonna be livid.
I mean, out of all the teams that surprised you on DVOA, the stats we were talking about earlier, Jets being ranked 32nd, so unsurprising. They're 32nd ranked in offense and 28th ranked in defense. That is a bad fucking team. Really.
The thing that surprises me, I hate to go back to DVOA, but New England being 31st on defense. Now, I know they had a lot of guys opt out, and their offense has put them in a lot of bad situations. With DVOA cancels that out, but I can't believe they're the 31st defense in the league.
They're spending the entire game on the field.
Yeah,
the offense can't sustain a drive. The amount of 3 and outs and just non-competitive third down plays it's remarkable.
Yeah, they're a bad team. So Ryan Russillo is a guy I listen to a lot, and he updates every week his rankings on who's winning on the Brady Belichick war or whatever the fuck that is that's going on. And he had an interesting take this week. He was like, these teams are Brady played so bad last week that somehow Bill Belichick in this terrible win against the clearly worst team in the league has risen above Brady. Like he's like, that's how little I think of Brady's performance last week. But who ultimately gets the best of that rivalry between Brady and Belichick?
I don't think we can really decide it this season. I mean, Brady's 43 and he's plugged into a very good roster. Right. So if he succeeds, he's in a very good roster. If he's terrible, he's 43. Belichick on the other side doesn't have Brady, but on paper, I mean, that it's probably the worst roster he's ever had. And they had 7 starters opt out for COVID. They lost their quarterback walked. They got no compensation for it. There wasn't really a lot of equity because you've been picking in the back end of the first round for the last 2 decades. There wasn't a lot there. So I don't think you can definitively say one or the other based on this season. Now, if you want to go back and try to analyze, use statistics and advanced stats to figure out during the course of the run, great, have at it. But I don't think anything definitive is happening in a 2020 season with a terrible New England roster and a 43-year-old Tom Brady.
Agree with you there. For sure.
So I got one question: Is Baker Mayfield playing for his job the second half of the season?
I mean, they're not going to really have many options, because they're just good enough that they can't really draft a guy. Yeah. They're past the point where they have those multiple first-round picks, so they don't really have a lot of options. They kind of just have what they have, and so they they have to make it do with Baker Mayfield because they still have a really good roster.
Do they? Because again, go to DVOA. They're the 23rd best team.
Myles Garrett is having a quiet Defensive Player of the Year season.
Yeah,
it's not getting a lot of hype. He's got 9 sacks. Like he's been a force. 4 forced fumbles. He's like he's probably my front runner for Defensive Player of the Year.
So you guys laughed at me. You guys do that often, and most of the time justify. But I said, how is that contributing to the defense? And you guys said, are you kidding me? You can have a one-man wrecking crew on a defense. Yes, he is having that, but the defense is 19th in the league. Like,
nobody else is covering. What's happening on? He has 9 sacks. What happened on the other 395 plays in the last couple weeks?
Yeah, the reality with that defense is that they've had a lot of high draft picks and they've whiffed on so many of them.
So many DBs, so many safeties and corners have just flopped.
I think Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward are probably their only hits.
Yeah. Straight up, and Denzel Ward is great, and so is Myles Garrett. But besides that, like you look at these guys that they kind of just went out, like Jabril Peppers, like all these guys that they fucking drafted and then just got rid of because they were terrible. They fucking Dorsey, they went through a bad stream of GMs just like they went through a bad stream of coaching. And despite themselves, they've put together like a decent team, but with all the picks that they've had, it's just so Browns. That they fuck up all these picks.
Yeah, I got to quit saying that, bold prediction, they're going to have a losing record. I've said that like the past 2 or 3 overreaction shows. DVOA has them as the 23rd best team. So 23rd best teams normally have losing records.
And the big problem with that defense too is, so you look, they have Denzel Ward, they have Myles Garrett, the 2 times they've hit on defense. But I've said this a lot, and I'll probably always say it, is in order to have an elite defense, you have to have a superstar at every level, and they are terrible at the linebacking position.
Right. Yep.
Bad.
Really bad.
Like, so can you even name a linebacker on that team?
Nope. Schubert, he left for Jacksonville.
Yeah.
But that was the only halfway decent one that they had.
So, guys, I don't want to go game by game this week, but there are some phenomenal games this week that I do want to kind of touch on a few of them. The number one game I think this week is Seattle at LA. Yeah. I think it's a great game for a number of reasons. Number one being that the Rams have had a really soft schedule so far. And so I really want to see how they perform against a team like Seattle.
They're 1-3 against non-NFC East teams. So.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So I think their DVO rankings, we were talking about how surprisingly good they are. I think those may be a little bit inflated because of their early schedule. Although it does factor that in and kind of, etch that out. So it should factor, or it should compensate for that. But I really want to see what the Rams have. Can Sean McVay outcoach Pete Carroll in this game at home?
Damn, you're talking about 2 elite coaches on that one. Can I say push, and I'm going to take the talent and go with Seattle, because I don't think I can choose who's a better coach out of those 2.
The Rams are favored by 2, which blew my mind. I mean, it just shows how little faith Vegas odds makers have in how bad Seattle's defense is, because their offense is so fucking good. but that defense, it's bottom 5.
That line will change. 87% of money is on Seattle. So that line is going to adjust. So if you like Seattle, grab it now because that line's going to change.
It's a bad matchup for Seattle too, if you think about it. I mean, they have a bad pass defense, and what the Rams do really well. They're going to come at you with multiple receivers, and the weakness on the Seahawks from an offensive standpoint is their interior offensive line. Aaron Darnold's going to be hanging out in the middle, causing havoc. Like it's a bad matchup. I like the Rams this week.
Yeah, I kind of do too. The points actually did start. It's actually moved more on the Rams side over the course of the week. I agree that it will move back towards Seattle, but it started out with the Rams only being favored by 1, and now they're favored by 2. I think this game is really interesting. I personally think Seattle is going to win it, but I do think it's a really interesting game betting wise. I love this as a just money line Seattle bet. Bet them right now while the Rams are 2-point favorites. I think this could even end up being a push game in terms of Vegas. So if you like Seattle, I agree. Bet them right now. But guys, Russell Wilson's not going to have 2 bad games in a row. And Jared Goff is Jared Goff. So I think those are the 2 biggest factors. Now, the Rams defense, how that performs against Russell Wilson, that's ultimately what's going to decide this game.
Yeah, another 2 factors that I think that I heard today on NFL Network, the Rams had a bye, so they've had a lot of time to prepare for this game. And we were just talking about McVay is a top flight coach, so you give him this much time to game plan against a team, you gotta like their odds. But then on the flip side, you should see what Russell Wilson's record is after a loss. He's something like 43-17. Like his record after a loss, he doesn't lose 2 in a row. So it's like this is an extremely tough game to pick, and I will probably be staying clear of it because man, you're right. This is definitively the best game of the week.
I mean, Seattle has no run game right now because all the running backs are injured. Chris Carson may or may not play. It's looking like he probably won't, but that could change. Yeah, I just think, it's one of these games. I don't know if I'd touch it either from a betting perspective, but if I had to, I'd go Seattle.
I do like him at plus money. I think they're the better team, but man, McVay with 2 weeks and Derek's points about the Rams' strengths and the Seattle's weak. There's a lot of signs that point to Seattle should lose this game, which is why I think Russell Wilson will pull it out.
So there's 3 other things that jump out at me looking at the schedule. I just want to hit on those 3 things. 1, Carolina, the Cardinals and the Bills. I think that's going to be a great game, and I like the Cardinals there. I think the Bills at 7-2 are not as good as they are in the wins and loss column, and I think the Cardinals beat them there. Why the NFL hasn't flexed the Ravens and Patriots out of Sunday night makes no sense to me. That's crazy. Not a primetime game. That's going to be such a shit show. I don't know how you don't flex a game like the Bills and Cardinals to that spot, or flex the game we just talked about to that spot. I don't understand why that's going to be a primetime game. And I'm excited to see the Vikings expose the 5-4 Bears on Monday Night Football.
Yeah, the fact that they're 2.5-point favorites against the Chicago on the road is really interesting. I mean, the Vikings really are. They're coming together. Their defense is really coming together, which is pretty interesting. I didn't actually think that would happen this year. But another great game this week is Buffalo at Arizona. Talk about just two teams that are kind of, they're kind of standing on the outside looking in. You wouldn't call either of these teams, the best in their conference, but they could be. They've shown streaks, both of them, that they can be elite teams at times, but they just seem to fall in these weird spots. Arizona's favored by 1.5. This is another game that I don't know that I want to touch, because I was so confident that Seattle was going to beat Buffalo last week, and man, I look dumb now. But Arizona being 1.5-point favorites against Buffalo, I'm not touching this shit.
At least you didn't go on a gambling show and call Seattle your lock of the week, like I did. But yeah, in regards to this game, man, I know we just said Arizona doesn't have a bad defense. Look at where they're at. I think this is going to be an absolute shootout. I think this might be one of the most entertaining games of the week. I think there's going to be a lot of fireworks, a lot of big plays. I could see like a 50-yard rushing touchdown by Josh Allen. I could see an 80-yard, Hopkins touchdown. I think you're going to see a lot of big plays. I think this is going to be the most enjoyable game to watch. But I'm with you, Joe. I don't know who's going to win this game. I think it's a phenomenal line. I could definitely see Arizona winning this by 3.
So take the Bills.
At 2.5. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, fade me. Definitely fade me.
Yep. All right, guys. Any other topics you want to get to?
Do we think the Buccaneers bounce back? Do we think it's a return to form, or do you think what we saw, the lack of run game, the susceptible to big plays, do we see another letdown week from Tampa Bay, or do you see them right back to what they were doing before last week?
I think they're going to whoop up Carolina. Honestly, I love Carolina this year. I really do, but I think they're overperforming their talent. Tampa's favored at 5.5. I actually love them to cover. And I think Tampa's going to just absolutely destroy them this week. I really, really, truly do. Tom Brady never has 2 games like that back to back. He's embarrassed. When Tom Brady's embarrassed, when he's being called out, God, that motherfucker rises to the occasion every single time. With another game with Antonio Brown, I just think they're going to crush him personally.
I know he's 43, so it's hard to compare to everything else. But if you look at that, so that's the worst loss of his career he's coming off of.
Yes.
If you look at the next 3 bad losses, the 3, 2 through 4, he won the Super Bowl every one of those years.
Exactly. Yep. And we've been talking about DVOA the whole show. The Bucs are still firmly in that number 2 spot. And that offense at 13th, I think they're better than that. I think they're still a top 10 offense. So I think the Bucs have no problem the rest of the year.
No, I think the whole goal, you bring in Tom Brady in a situation like this, the goal is to deliver him to that moment. Deliver him to the point where he's down 4. It's the last drive of the Super Bowl. That's what the Bucs, the rest of that roster's job is to deliver him to that moment and let him do what he does. I fully believe that.
Yep.
Cool. That's all I got.
What about you, Brandon? You think they'll?
I think that game's very ugly. I think that's going to be probably the most forgettable game because that has blowout of the week written all over it.
Fair.
Yep.
Well, let's wrap this thing up. Flight to Tunisia says that we are done. But hey, if you enjoyed the show, please give us a like or subscribe. And any closing thoughts?
Here's the Washington football team hosting a playoff game, baby.
Right. Yes.
The Miami Dolphins and Washington football team winning divisions in 2020. What a fucking world.
Who'd have thunk? All right, guys. This is Sports Memory Podcast. Have a great night.
See ya.